In this week's episode of One Piece, Doflamingo drops a historical bombshell on Law, and the remaining members of the Straw Hat crew have to deal with the artistic madness of Giolla. I really liked this episode, from a visual standpoint. That's not to say this episode was bad, just in the grand scheme of things, not that much happened this week. I mean, there was a short battle between the Straw Hats and Giolla, and that was definitely saved by the fact that Giolla's powers revolve around art, and that gave the animators a great excuse to go crazy with the imagery. But for the most part, this episode was just getting to see what the other members of the Straw Hat crew were doing, where they're going, and what they're up to. But one important scene that we can take away from this week is at the very beginning, where we get to see Doflamingo and Fujitora are continuing to beat the ever-living shit out of Law. And what I love most about this scene is how much Doflamingo is grooving on all of this. He is such an amazing villain, mostly because of how much of a dick he is. But what I love about this is not only are they just like ganging up on him and beating the crap out of him, but this gives him an excuse to start monologuing, and it actually gives us a history lesson about how the world government was formed. And he goes on to say that apparently like 800 years in the past, at least that's what my translation said, that 20 kingdoms came together and they formed the world government. But one of these kingdoms is actually the Alabasta Kingdom, and they actually left, and this is just a great way to tie this into an earlier arc in One Piece. But the biggest thing about this scene that we can take away is that clearly Doflamingo has a connection to the world government and how they were formed, and so does his family. But they don't really follow up on that too much. That's when we go to the other members of the Straw Hat crew. There is Kinemon and Zoro, and this is a great scene because Bartolomeo notices that Zoro is outside, and he gets a total boner for this guy, and it's hilarious because we already knew that he loved Luffy and the Straw Hat Pirates, but he knows everything about these guys. He like recites like all of the things about Zoro, and it's really funny. And again, it just gives us another candidate for Straw Hat Pirate. I can easily see Bartolomeo being a member of the crew because, one, he's got a great design, a ridiculous personality, and awesome powers. And then, of course, there's also Rebecca, but we can't count Violet out yet because she has a strong connection to Sanji, but her clairvoyance abilities allow her to pretty much see anything, and that's pretty awesome. The battle against Giolla is ridiculous, to say the least. When it actually opens up, you get to see that Chopper, Nami, and Momonosuke are actually stuck to this massive painting, and they're actually being choked by it, and eventually they will be killed. But for some odd reason, Giolla and Brook have some sort of strange connection, and she sort of trusts him, and that's probably because he's a musician and she considers him an artist. But Brook is sort of going along with her to sort of trick her, and even takes her out with one of his badass sword techniques. But then Giolla just goes crazy and traps them in this massive world where she can pretty much control everything, and she actually transforms into this thing. I don't know what the hell it is. All I know is she transforms into this massive blob of artwork. Literally looks like frickin' Picasso just like puked all over the frickin' place. She's got these weird spikes coming out of her back, she has like a two-face thing going on, and she can summon all of these weird hands from her body, which she tries to do to stop them, but Brook just manages to cut those up. But this gives the other members of the Straw Hat crew the opportunity to power up the cannon and blow that bitch away. It's a pretty exciting scene, but it's really cool because of all of the imagery and the colors, and just how crazy everything looks. But that's actually not the end of the battle. Somehow Giolla actually survives being blasted by this massive cannon and is flying out of the sky and tries to attack them again. And this is probably one of the greatest parts of the episode. Momonosuke is actually the one who kind of finishes her off. He gets a little bit of help from Nami because she hits her with a lightning bolt. But he comes in and just whacks her on the head and beats her, and that's it. And again, that just made me think, Kinemon and Momonosuke could be another great candidate for Straw Hat crew members. And that would be great to see like a father-son like dynamic on the ship. I just think that would be really funny because, one, Kinemon's pretty powerful in his own right. And I also really noticed in this episode, and I've seen it before, but it was really apparent in this one, he is tall as shit. When you saw him standing next to Zoro, I actually thought it was kind of funny. But, you know, he's got his awesome fire swords, and Momonosuke clearly can transform into a dragon, and with a little bit of time, he can probably hone those abilities. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of One Piece? I liked it. It wasn't perfect because not too much happened, but at least everything was there, looked really good. All of the artwork and the animation was very consistent, and they went really crazy with Giolla's powers. I love the fact that a lot of the times, when she was using her art abilities, that it wasn't just like one stable, solid color. They would constantly change them, and they were all fluorescent and neon looking, and I just thought that was very visually appealing. Brook this week was badass, Nami was really capable, Chopper unfortunately didn't get to do too much, but Momonosuke, he definitely surprised me at the end when he decided to just jump in and finally decide to attack Giolla. I thought that was pretty awesome. The thing with Doflamingo at the beginning was great because it just showed how wonderful of a villain he is. He's the type of villain you love to hate, and they've been building him up for some time, and the fact that his family is connected to the formation of the world government is pretty ground-shaking and pretty awesome. And I imagine none of this is even like sitting too well with Fujitora. He hasn't really been too vocal about everything that's been going on, and he's allowing Doflamingo to do all of this like really underhanded shit to Law. So I'm really not quite sure how to read him, and that probably has to do with the fact that I believe he's also blind as well. But that's pretty much it. He's just a quiet guy. I'm really surprised they actually didn't go back to Kurita Coliseum this week. They didn't really show us anything with Luffy too much. But Bartolomeo was really funny this week. Violet was really awesome. I love how her and Sanji are still working together. And her power is just, she can do anything, man. Like, do you guys remember she was shooting whales out of her eyeballs and now she can, like, see everything? Like, she has, like, the ultimate Byakugan. It's crazy. And that, again, just makes her a great candidate for Straw Hat member. There's a lot of them in this arc. So at the end of the day, this was a pretty good episode of One Piece. Very heavy on the humor, but it had some cool revelations, some pretty awesome action scenes, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen next week. And I didn't even mention Gladius. Holy crap, I have to remember this guy. Okay, there's this one other member of Don Quixote's family known as Gladius, and he looks like the wet dream of a steampunk cosplayer. And that's only because he has these gears all over his body, he's wearing a top hat, and he has goggles and a mask. But his, like, hat can actually, like, explode because his hair is so big, and he totally looks like a Super Saiyan. I just had to say that. He's a ridiculous member of Don Quixote's family, and I hope they do something really cool with him. Because, frankly, I think his design is actually pretty badass. A lot of the members of Don Quixote's family are, but some of them can definitely go into the ridiculous One Piece territory, which we saw with Giolla this week. But it actually works. Somehow it actually works within the universe. It doesn't clash at all. And that is something that One Piece has always been very good at. Making something seem really ridiculous and off-putting and kind of strange, and making it into something really intimidating and action-packed. So, good episode, a little slow in some parts, nothing too crazy, but at least everything that was here this week looked really nice. So I'm going to drop a 7 out of 10 on this bad boy. Check it out, One Piece fans. It was pretty awesome. Thank you guys for watching my review today. Before you go, make sure and tell me what you thought about this week's episode of One Piece, and what did you think of the battle between the Straw Hat crew and Giolla. Remember, before you leave, to hit that like button so you can give this video a thumbs up. It really, really helps out our videos a lot. And you can subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Before you guys leave, at the end of the video, look for the link from my review of the second episode of Sword Art Online 2. It's a great series. If you haven't checked out the first season, check it out so you can catch up on the second one. It is awesome. So guys, that concludes my review today. Super Kami Guru 9000. Out.